thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm very much looking forward to having an exchange of view and to talk about issues very close to my heart. Sweden took over the presidency on 1st of July, and let me tell you, that day came as a relief, because then the worst part was over. Colleagues had told me before, and I know now it's true. It is the worst part is actually the weeks and months just before you take over, because you are nervously waiting and you keep adjusting your plans and you second guess the checks. What are they going to leave for us to handle, and what will they, handle themselves? It was actually a relief to actually take over. I think we had a very good start. On day one, 1st of July, the European Commission descended upon us in Stockholm, all of them. I could detect some nervousness in the Commission President about future career options, but we also had a very good discussion on the very serious policy issues that we have to handle during the autumn. A few days later, we had a visit from the European Parliament, led by President Pöttering, but all the new group leaders, so that was good too. We could finalize the consultations with the European Parliament, and shortly after that, we decided to formalize the Council's nomination of Barroso as President for the European Commission. So, since then, this is already more than 3 weeks ago, we've already had a number of meetings, and that is good, very good, because we are planning for a great number of meetings. But meetings, it's what it's all about now in post-World War Europe. It's conferences and mineral water rather than confrontations and military threats. So meetings are what drives our agenda forward. And we have planned for 113 meetings and conferences and seminars in Sweden, including 11 informal council meetings. And half of these meetings are scheduled for the months of July and September, because we would like our guests to benefit from a bit of daylight when they come. So that's why we're really kick-starting. All in all, there will be a couple of 100 meetings with third countries and more than 3,000 meetings with the Swede in the chair during this half year. As a way of introduction also, let me tell you that there have been enormous amount of practical issues to deal with in preparing this presidency. Everything from the color of furniture in the council to escorts and transports and flowers. And can you guess the most debated issue of all? It went all the way up to the government level. It was vetoed by Bildt. The tie. The presidency tie. But at least the outcome was good. Well, we have it here on the Swedish ambassador on the first row. Yeah. Anyway, political planning has, of course, also been thorough. My former boss, Olli Rehn, he used to say that good planning is half the job done. And we have made plans. We have planned our meeting agendas, and we are busy writing now the conclusions that we would like to see at the end of each meeting. I'm actually not kidding. Of course, we know that this will not actually be the exact outcome, but it's also something you have to prepare in good time. So we have loads of plans, but we also know that you should not be too attached to your plans. You have to be ready to throw them overboard if realities so demand. And I promise you that we will try to be flexible. I don't know if you've seen these T-shirts or postcards that you can buy in Brussels describing the perfect European as, cooking like a Brit, talkative as a Finn, organized as a Greek, and flexible as a Swede. And I frankly cannot see the humor in this description at all. And I wonder if you have difficulties with yours. Sober as the Irish. Yeah. So, we are facing a number of crucial issues and challenges. We are trying to get mentally prepared for all these challenges, and you may have noticed our slogan for the presidency, taking on the challenge. And the two main priorities, I think as Tony already alluded to, are climate change and the economy. Big, important areas that affect also every citizen of the European Union. And on the climate issue, it is our ambition that the EU should continue to be a leading global partner in this. We will continue to make efforts so that the world can arrive at an ambitious treaty and an ambitious agreement in Copenhagen in December at the UN conference. We had a climate and energy package adopted during the French presidency, which was ambitious and good, but now we have to take this issue forward. And of course, it is a huge undertaking to keep the 27 EU member states together and at the same time deal with the rest of the world. And a number of critical problems remain in the international negotiations. We have to first figure out how all the industrial countries can achieve emission reductions that amount to 25 to 40%. We have to make sure that emerging economies, like China, manage to limit their emissions, and we have to also agree on financing for the developing world to help them adapt, and also, by the way, make sure that the needed technical transfers are done to the third world. But it is very important now to move on the financing issue for our own sake, in order to also to respond to the expectations that developing countries place on the EU. And we absolutely need a broad agreement now for the period after 2012. The economic crisis must not be seen as an excuse for not being ambitious when it comes to the environment. It's actually on the contrary. I think the Stern report with world expertise makes it very clear that the investments we have to do today are relatively small. But if we don't do them, the costs we will face later on are huge. The Swedish government will work now to promote the full potential of environmental technology and continue the work on market-based instruments so that we can achieve our climate and environmental goals in a cost-efficient way. But let me also underline that this climate change, it's not only a problem, it's also full of interesting opportunities. And I'm so convinced that the EU can, by being at the forefront here, actually gain in various ways. We can tackle the environmental threat, which is important in itself. We can develop the technology needed and be a leader in developing this technology and gain jobs and export possibilities. And we can prove ourselves to be a constructive global partner, a real player on the international scene. So it's not just a win situation or a win-win, it's a triple win. And there may be big economic gains also by being in the forefront here. According to a European Commission report I've seen, they figure that by 2050, the market for the new energy technology may be worth some $3,000 billion and employ 25 million people. So, of course, it's in our interest to get a chunk of this pie. And furthermore, by being less wasteful and more resource-smart, cost-efficient, low-carbon, eco-efficient, whatever you want to call it, it's, of course, also smart in itself. That way Europe becomes more secure from possible supply problems. I've seen that, for example, if the Ukraine was as good or managed to be efficient in the same way as the Czech Republic and Slovenia are today, the Ukraine would be practically independent from Russian gas. So a lot to gain. Ladies and gentlemen, as Tony said initially, we have a serious global economic and financial crisis, and it has caused declining growth, unemployment, and bankruptcies. And in some member states, booming economies turned into negative growth, and it's, of course, very serious. In several countries, the public finances are on the brink of collapse. And it's clear that we will have to expect the unemployment to continue to rise in the following months, even if there are some positive signs on the horizon. But I think we should also note that it's thanks to joint action at EU level that we have been able to avoid a complete collapse of the entire financial system. And through its recovery plan, the EU aims to offset the recession, make it as mild as possible, reduce the impact on employment, and improve competitiveness. And the Swedish presidency will continue along these lines and will endeavour to restore confidence in the financial markets, get credit channels running again, and really combat the negative impact of the crisis on growth and employment, and try to think now also of long-term solutions for sustainable growth and employment and open markets. A strengthened supervisory framework for financial markets in Europe is a priority for us. We will get some input from the Commission, I think, in September that we will take forward as quickly as we can in the relevant council formations. And this will also be dealt with at global level at the G20 meeting when the Swedish Presidency will coordinate the EU positions. We would very much like to see the European emerge as a stronger economic power after the crisis than it was before. And our strategy is threefold now. We intend to follow up on the recovery plan, the measures taken already, and we will at the same time have a preparedness to take new initiatives whenever needed and to keep this longer-term perspective in mind. Inter alia, when we elaborate on the new strategy for growth and jobs that will replace the current Lisbon strategy. And we intend to cooperate now very closely with the next EU presidency, Spain, and the Commission on a successful launch of this new strategy. It will be officially launched under the Spanish presidency next spring, but it's very important now to use this opportunity during this autumn to raise different issues and try to get the EU member states to see things in a united fashion, prepare for a smooth launch later on for the Spaniards. We would like to take this opportunity now to highlight, for example, the importance of openness, internally and externally. We need markets that allow money and people to move from declining industries into future growing industries. And we need to devote resources to research, innovation, better education and training systems. And we need an open global trading system. Better regulation is another important area. In the light of this economic recession, we would have needed to do it otherwise anyway, but now it's even more important that we do our best to give the business community a good environment to work in. By reducing red tape and burdensome bureaucracy, we can help the entrepreneurs and the businesses grow. And for smaller economies, such as Sweden's and Ireland's, it is crucial that the companies have good opportunities to compete on an international market. And for this, of course, we have to be competitive. That same applies, of course, for the rest of the European countries. Regulations need to be cost-effective and easy to understand and to comply with. Furthermore, we would like the regulations to encourage innovation and help facilitate the shift into an eco-efficient economy. So we will try to develop now the present better regulation agenda in all the relevant council formations. We will make specific proposals on how future better regulation efforts should be built into this new strategy, the new Lisbon strategy for growth and jobs. I don't know if it will be called Madrid strategy or Lisbon 2 or whatever in the future. But we believe now that the topic of better regulations should be a cross-cutting priority for all the institutions. I mean, the European Parliament, the new Commission, and the Council. Currently, there are 44 simplification proposals on reducing administrative costs in the so-called co-decision procedure, so dealt with by the European Parliament and Member States in the Council. A number of these proposals, they are worth some 2.3 billion euros, I've been told, are dealt with under fast track, and there are also a few new proposals from the Commission in the pipeline. The stated goal is to reduce administrative costs by 25% by 2012. And we insist now that this is a net reduction, because if you reduce with one hand and you add with the other, then of course it's not worth very much. So it has to be a net reduction. That's important. During our presidency, we will also host an international regulatory reform conference in Stockholm, mid-November, in cooperation with the German Bertelsmann Foundation. We expect more than 500 participants from 5 continents to attend, including the OECD and the World Bank and, of course, European institutions. Now, the economy and the climate, those are the really huge issues for us. But apart from that, we have a couple of other issues that I also would like to highlight to you. And one is, another important issue is to help the EU to continue to develop a more secure and open Europe. And we hope that the Stockholm programme in the area of justice and home affairs will contribute to this. You may have heard that there was a Tampere program that expired 5 years ago, and then came the Hague program that expires now. So now we think it's, of course, time for a Stockholm program. Although my Dutch friend says that we could call it Hague 2. But we have opted now for Stockholm. So this is now a priority for us, and we had already last week an informal council meeting when this was discussed. I've been told discussions were fruitful and that it's clear now that member states want an ambitious and future-looking program. We build on the basis now of a communication we got from the Commission on, I think, the 10th of June, which we are quite happy about. It serves as a good basis, and we also, of course, take account of reports from the future groups and the European Pact for Migration and Asylum. One thing that we are particularly happy about in the Commission communication is that it is citizen-oriented. It really takes the citizen as a starting point, and we think that is very sympathetic and nice. And we see a need to balance, tough law enforcement measures and fight against crime with measures that secure the rights of the individual and the rule of law. For example, individual rights in criminal proceedings, rules on protection, for example, for refugees and victims of trafficking, and rules on data protection, that kind of things. I think it will mean a lot of work, but we hope that this Stockholm programme will be adopted at the European Council in December. Then, if I may mention a project that is particularly close to my own heart, since I am special envoy for this, it's the Baltic Sea strategy that we hope will be adopted at the October European Council. The aim of the Baltic Sea strategy is manifold, but the most important goals are to clean up the sea, which is suffering from severe environmental problems. This is a very, very special sea. It's shallow, it's brackish, it has unique species. Because of the geographical location of Denmark, it kind of clogs up the entrance to the sea. The turnover of the water is not very swift. It takes actually 30 years to change waters. I mean, if you pollute it now, it may take 30 waters for it to wash out. So it's very sensitive. And every summer, unfortunately, now that we get into the summer and the bathing season, we get reports about algal bloomings and eutrophication, oxygen-depleted seabeds, and these sad stories. I don't know if you have seen algal blooms. Several of you have. The first time I saw it a few years ago, I thought somebody had poured paint into the sea, some orange, yucky stuff. I thought, what on earth? And it's not good for you. Of course, you can't swim in that. No, so urgent environmental concerns here. But this is not at all about only environment. This is also, for example, about making this region more dynamic economically. This is also all the more important now in the light of the crisis. In my vision, this is the region where the Lisbon strategy or Madrid strategy, whatever, will be implemented in the most efficient way. This is where the internal market is going to be working in the most efficient way as well. So I think we will now try to harmonize legislation to a larger extent and try to tear down obstacles. And the exciting part is now to think more macro. I mean, most of the countries around the Baltic Sea are small countries with, depending on exports. I think we can gain very much by thinking macro instead of thinking around, along national lines. Complement each other more, stop duplications, and actually make 1 + 1 = 3, if we get this right. One other particular aspect that I'd like to mention that I think is quite exciting about the strategy is that it has a completely new form of governance. The strategy has been divided up into 15 different priority areas, and we have now different countries who have volunteered to be a priority coordinator for each area, take special responsibility. We have a number of projects, or flagship projects, that also countries volunteer to take lead for, take a special responsibility for. Also regional organizations can take the lead. And I think this is quite exciting, because by assigning responsibilities and by agreeing deadlines, we put pressure on ourselves. And that's why I think that this is something that will work better than many other things that have been tried in this region. This is an EU internal policy. Cannot be compared, for example, the Mediterranean Union. It's not part of our external policy kit. It's internal policy. But for those of you who have studied geography, you may have noted that 8 out of 9 states around the Baltics are members of the Union, but there is a 9th one, and that's Russia. And of course, if we all agree on nice things and they just drive their boats like this or continue to pollute, I mean, it would not be so good. So we foresee inviting Russia to cooperate with us on specific projects of common interest. And by the way, also other countries could come in. The northern dimension will be the way to deal with the countries that are not members of the Union. Now, maybe say a few words on external relations, which I think is the area the most difficult to predict, obviously, because who knows what will happen in the world. You know, is this okay to? Yes, we're not too formal here. You all are. Well, women have certain liberties, I think. Yeah, it's very difficult to predict. But of course, we would very much like to strengthen the EU as a global actor and have an efficient, coherent external policy, because the EU has an important role in promoting human rights and democracy and economic development around the world. We would like to keep the EU's enlargement on track. That's important to us. The implementation of the Eastern Partnership, likewise, as well as strengthening capacities within the European security and defence policy. I can mention that we have a range of summits at top level planned for this autumn, with 7 of them actually: South Africa, Brazil, Russia, India, China, the Ukraine, and the United States. And it's of course enormously important that these will not just be photo ops for prime ministers in front of flags, but that they are really used to produce important decisions. And practically all of these countries, for example, are key players when it comes to getting a climate treaty in place. So of course we will have to use these summits intelligently. Otherwise, I'd like to tell you that our ambition is to do a good job, and we define this as open, efficient, and result-oriented. We hope to provide the leaderships needed in these pretty uncertain times. But of course, the challenges we are facing are not only a task for Sweden and the Swedish Presidency. It's working together that is the essence of the European Union, and we will very much depend on friends and colleagues around the European Union. I'd like to make some publicity for our website, sc2009.eu, because there you can find an update. We've really worked hard to try to make this the most modern website ever, and very user-friendly. We interviewed loads of people before we launched this to see what are you really looking for, and I hope that we have managed to live up to their requests. But here you can find an update on what is going on, not just on a daily basis, but actually minute to minute, minute by minute, through news and film clips and blogs and Twitter remarks, and we hope, useful ways to present how we deal with today's and tomorrow's challenges. To conclude, maybe just a few words on the context for our presidency. Tony was on to this a little bit as well. We feel that there are rather high expectations on Sweden on what we should be able to achieve during our 6 months at the helm. At the same time, circumstances are unusually difficult. A leading journalist in Sweden, a correspondent in Brussels, has labeled this half year 6 months in hell. And she is, of course, referring to the circumstances. We have a new European Parliament that is taking shape and that is keen to mark out its territory. We have an incoming European Commission yet to be appointed. And the Lisbon Treaty is not in place, although I very, very much hope that we will be able to successfully conclude the ratification in all outstanding countries during the autumn and ensure a smooth entry into force of the new treaty. It is very good now that we have a timetable for Ireland, and the outcome is, of course, crucially important, since the Lisbon Treaty, among other things, determines the size of the future Commission and how the Union will be run in the future. So, no lack of challenges ahead. Personally, I feel very privileged to be involved in this because I'm a firm believer in European cooperation, so I cannot think of anything that would be more meaningful. So, thank you very much.